There we go. We're now recording. I can hear both Kosha and Kevin. It's just a name thing. So the guy in the hat who's laughing, it says Kevin Stone, is actually a good friend of mine, Kosha Irby, who's the regional director at live events at WWE. He's been with WWE since 2011. He oversees all the marketing, the public relations, and he provides strategic guidance for live events. What does that mean exactly?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure that out myself.
Right? It's a great job title. And it says for events in WWE's Western region, but I'll let him tell you this morning where he just got back from. And that's a big West, if that's what that means. But listen, Koshi's been a client of mine for a number of years and has participated in panels at FaceTime events before. And like I said, we can never get enough of him. He's wise, talented, brilliant guy that we love to hear from. So he's also served in various capacities in college athletics. He had stints at St. Louis University, University of South Florida. Oh, he knows Florida, Kevin. And Georgia State, yeah. And Kosha attended the University of Memphis where he earned an MBA in marketing. So welcome, Kosha. We could probably tell you how to right click on your name there and change it, but we'll just have an interview with two Kevin Stones. It'll be great. Yeah. Hey, Kevin. Nice to see you from Jacksonville, Florida. He's the real Kevin Stone. He is the director of programming at the Great Florida Theater. It's a beautiful venue. He's been there since 2013 and has a great story of what he's done there to bring ticket sales. I don't know, what's your increase been, Kevin? What's that number of the percentage of increase? But I know it got you to a Polestar top 50 venue pretty quickly.
Yeah, the first year we were here, it was an increase of 78% in ticket sales.
Wow.
So you can't grow that much every year, but that was a big jump for sure.
Yeah,
and last year we were ranked 50.
You only have so many seats, man. Like you can't possibly, and so many days in a year.
But there are about 200 days a year that we don't have events, so there's room to fill.
Room to fill. Well, Kevin was at Ruth Eckerd Hall in Clearwater as the director of entertainment previous to that. And he's got a bachelor's degree in technical theater and theater design. How fun. And yet you're programming. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you never know where you get to where you need to be.
You don't, but I'm really happy. Guys, thanks for taking time. I know you're super busy. Kosha, where are you back from right now? Just briefly before we get going.
Yeah, we did a tour over in the Middle East, which I oversee some of that business over there, and over in the UK. So we started off in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Then we went to Manchester, Newcastle, Aberdeen, Glasgow, Birmingham, Wales, and then we ended in Spain, which is not a bad place to end a tour.
Spain's good.
Yeah, we did about 11 days, and we did about 11 dates over 10 days, and so it was a lot of travel, and we just got back. Kind of cool to be back in LA right now. Literally been on the road 44 of the last 50 days, so I'm kind of cool to just sleep in my own bed.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you know what time it is right now?
It's the funniest thing. I am still, my travel trick is I sleep in 4-hour increments, 3 to 4 hour increments when I'm on the road, so I don't ever really get used to a time zone. So I just now keep that up over the last, like I said, 50 days. And so now it's kind of weird because I wake up, I sleep from 11 to 3, wake up, and then get another couple of hours in and keep going. So it's working. Hopefully I can break the system here, but I'll be back on tour before I break it.
Yeah, I'm sure you will. Well, hey, you guys bring an interesting perspective because, Kosha, you've got the road show, right? So you're all over the country and all over the world with your programming. Kevin, you're trying to bring people to Jacksonville. So I like the variation that we have there, but I want to start by getting a pulse from you guys. Everybody kind of wants to know what's going on in live events. How do we see attendance? What's engagement? What's the buzz that's going on this year in live events? And what trends do you see? And either one of you can start.
Well, I know for us, it's been a great year for us in terms of live event attendance. We're up across the board. We're to the tune, we've increased our live events. We were last year doing roughly 360 shows over the year. This year we're probably encroached 450. and next year, 2017, we'll probably hit roughly 500 shows. So we see the business growing, and we're seeing it growing in different places. You know, there are a lot of emerging markets. The cool thing about being in a global economy for us is we get to go find new markets that we normally just wouldn't play. Santiago, Chile, Lima, Peru is just two that we just played. We're now making and encroaching on China. We just played India. We just played Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. So there's numerous places globally for us to expand. And you know, domestically, we just did a survey, or we took part in a survey with a couple of other consumer brands, and it was an interesting statistic, or an interesting takeaway from that. And it used to be that back in the 70s and 80s, the number one asset for most Americans was a home. And then when you kind of encroached on the 90s and early 2000s, it became more of the ancillary things, boats and cars. And this study concluded that today's millennials and today's baby boomers, the number one thing that they cherish the most is a shared experience. And for anybody that's in the live event business, that is music to your ears, because that shared experience is what we provide. We strive to try to provide an experience for everybody. And so hearing that nugget, and hearing that that you know, most analysts are predicting an uptick in 2017 for paid attendance and live events, you know, we see it as another strong year for the live event business, you know, as long as you're providing good content, as we like to say.
Who did that study? I'm curious, because I love that.
We got it from a group out of Chicago, and I get you the flat sheet and try to forward it over to you.
That'd be cool. That'd be very cool, because I think that's good news for all of us. Kevin, what are you seeing with you know, trends, attendance? What kind of events are coming around? What are the trends that you're seeing?
Well, yeah, obviously we're in a different position, not being a global venue. We're you know, Jacksonville and Jacksonville proud. You know, we're kind of a small market in a big city, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. We're not Miami, Tampa, Orlando. We're the fourth one in Florida. We're the one, if they're going to give you 4 dates, you know, Jacksonville's on the map. But so we got to battle that and try to prove that you know, those millennials that you mentioned are willing to come to those shared experiences. So we have, you know, over the last 3 years, kind of taken our the theater from about 40 events a year to about 175 events a year. So trying to push it beyond that, you know, gets a little tough when you're balancing, you know, ticket sales. I mean, you know, you can book 300 events a year.
Yeah. You book whatever you want.
Yeah, right. So you have to try to balance that. You want to try to book quality, and you know, obviously we're a mission-based organization, so we're trying to do a well-rounded year. I don't want to use the term season, because we're not really a seasonal building. We don't have a seasonal brochure, and we're not a Broadway season. We're booking entertainment, you know, as a la carte as it comes. So, you know, Jacksonville really has embraced the Florida Theater. Obviously, we're a historic building. We've been here since 1927. Elvis played his first, you know, indoor concert in this building. So there's a lot of history, and a lot of people really cherish the building. And now we're just trying to make a valiant effort to bring product. And you know, some days it works gangbusters, and other days it's a little bit more of a struggle. But we look at the average at the end of the year, and you know, on the programming side, not a company as a whole, but on the programming side, we were, you know, a few $100,000 ahead of our budget for last year. So we're a nonprofit. You know, that's music to our ears.
Yeah.
And so it's been pretty great. My experiences with the millennials is a little different than that study. Is that while I agree that they want the live experience, a shared live experience, you know, for the most part they want it for free, or you know, and we can't sustain that, and that's, you know, and you know, you're going to mention later, but that goes into the uptick in free festivals and street fairs and all that kind of stuff. So you know, it gets really hard for you know, when you have the, you know, a certain class, a generation, I guess, who wants these great experiences, but they don't want to pay what it's worth. And we all and Kosha knows more than any of us what it costs to take a show from point A to point B. We're lucky to just be here and wake up in our bed and come to work and greet the touring party, but it's expensive, and those expenses fall down the line.
Yeah, and I'll also say too, with the live event experience, and to Kevin's point, we still, and nobody can be naive or ignore the trend of alternative entertainment or alternative consumption of entertainment. You look at TV, and you look at, for us, we had to bite the bullet and commit to our OTT, which is over-the-top television. Portland, we launched our own network as a result of this, as opposed to cable, because cable in certain ways that millennials and even to this now, baby boomers are consuming their entertainment. So another thing with that shared experience and with that free experience is you're going to have to try to create cheaper entertainment, a cheaper touch point, and basically, as we like to call it, that gateway to your core product or your core entertainment source that you're going to have. And we're still trying to figure that out, because our gateway has always been wrestling. That's what we do. That's what we've built on. And we're starting to see that we are having to kind of roll out that smaller or that cheaper event just to reintroduce or introduce new people to our core product. And so that is a trend that I think people are still trying to figure out, because obviously there's cost and there's not a lot of revenue attached to it, but there's a lot of impact that can be received if you do it right. So I think that, as we kind of go down the line into 2017, those that sample with that, or those that try to integrate more of those quote-unquote porch offerings or gateway offerings, whatever term you want to use to make it a buzzword, is going to be critical in order for the success for the future.
What they'd really like, the millennials, is to pay a membership for your theater, Kevin, and they get to go to free events all month, right? You'd pay you $15 a month like Netflix, and they get all the content they want.
Unlimited.
Unlimited.
They can share that,
yeah.
And they can share that password or that ticket with 37 other people.
I mean, it really is tough, because this is a generation that has never paid for music. And at the most that they'll do is pay a membership if they feel they're getting value out of that. So yeah, to get them to drop $50 for 2 hours is like, whoa, that's like my Netflix and my Spotify membership, every month all rolled up into one night. It's gone. So
but you'll see them go to the bar and drop $75 on an hour of drinking, and
because there's never been free booze, right?
The shared experience.
yeah. Very true.
But but it goes back to that statement, the shared experience, and I think as content providers, we have to understand what it is that they want to do, and we have to exploit that. The shared experience is not anymore just coming and sitting for 2 to 3 hours and watching a focal point. It is, can I come? How can this be? How can this? I mean, we literally have people that come to our shows. We did a survey or an exit poll on this, and it's the motivation to come to the show. And it was a minute population, but it was people who answered this question when they came to the show so that they can post they were there.
Wow.
Just that simple. That was their rationale for coming.
Yeah, it's good to know.
And so when you look at, the motivations have changed.
Well, it sounds like Kevin Stone on the right has frozen a little, Kosha. So I'm going to go on. I don't know. I hope I'm not talking over you. But at least for me, I'm having trouble hearing you. So I'm going to go on and kind of pick up on that and talk about the event experience. So guys, it's a little later on, this could be me that's having trouble. I don't know. It says that I am. I'm going to go on, though, and just say, when we're talking about the event experience, including more than just a couple hours of entertainment, exactly what Kosha was saying, that was later in what we're going to talk about. But I want to find out what you're doing on both sides to increase the value of the whole event for your patrons. Okay, and just hold tight. We're experiencing some difficulty with my connection on my end, so if everybody else is hearing, we'll have the guys continue on. Yeah, I know. Are they? Can you hear them? Yeah, I can hear them. So they're going okay. Okay, so can you see if Ron can? Okay, so let's maybe reboot that little router. So are they talking? Are they carrying on? Yeah, yeah. Okay. Amy's up there. And she's helping? Yes. Let me give her the questions, and then I think we need to reboot
Downtown theater, we have a singer-songwriter playing, so that it's not, so you don't walk but next to the undesirable our undesirable neighbors, if you will. So that's how we can control the experience before an artist takes the stage.
Yeah, and I will totally echo that. And the other thing that I would try to do in that shared experience is to have a firm grasp, and we deal with this a lot when we go into a venue, is how are you maximizing that space? How are you maximizing, to Kevin's point, how are you maximizing the driveway experience? When they park their car in your lot or wherever they're parking, what are they greeted with? Are they greeted with music? Can they smell? Can they hear? Are we attacking their senses? And we literally, when we look at a lot of our venues in terms of site visits, that is a critical thing that we talk about. So it's any of the content providers or venue hosts out there, I think it's critical to start walking your own path and understanding what the fan sees once they get out of their car, or understanding what the patron sees once they get out of their car, so that they can then you can then drive more of that shared experience for them and create that content so that they can, once again, post. Like it was funny, but we were just in Denver, and everybody's kind of building the plazas. Pepsi Center's done a great job where they have just a mural. They have construction going on, and they have this huge fence that's an eyesore to anybody else. But they then took and put a bunch of local artists photos and different things that you could just snap different photos in front of, and that little change literally can change the outlook of an event based off of, they can take that photo, post it, they were there, it was a cool photo, it was kind of a one-of-a-kind type deal. But once again, just walk your own path, and that's something that I will harp to everybody when you start talking about that shared experience.
I'm back.
Hey.
Woohoo! I think you guys are talking about the increased event experience, not just that hour and a half, 2 hours of sitting there. Kevin, have you talked to that while I was out trying to fix my internet connection?
I did. I started that conversation.
And thanks, Amy, for popping in and helping us out.
Yeah, no problem.
So I apologize if I was talking over, but let's jump to pricing, because I think that's a critical part in programming that we need to talk about and be watching the trends. Your strategy on pricing is key. And I want to hear from both of you guys what price levels are working right now, because I like to talk to people that are doing programming, and at different times of the economy doing different things. Sometimes your high and low prices are what's working. Other times it's those middle. So what do you guys see? What's selling for you in both your very differing markets right now?
I know for me it varies by market. For us, we have a joke, but we typically do about, for a typical show, somewhere between 5 and 7 price levels, and we always joke that our money is made on the P2 to P4, and our volume is made on the P7, P8, and that's our balancing act. We don't really make our P1 tickets, our top price tickets for average show is about $125, and at the most I'm probably going to have 500 of those seats out of 10,000, but where we make our bread and butter is going to be on that P3, P4 seat, which is the ones that we price aggressively enough to try to generate some profit margin. And then we also make our volume, or we get our attendance figure from those $15 and $20 seats. And that is the balance. And for us, we try to create scenarios with those two specific price categories, 15, 20, and that 85, 65 type ticket, where it's an either or scenario. And that is how we, we make our money. Either you can sit up high or sit at a less desirable seat for a little cheaper, or you can sit down low for a more expensive seat and to get that. And once you can create that this or that scenario, that's the promoter's dream, because now the building is working to my advantage. In terms of price sensitivity, it really just depends on where you are. I mean, for us, once again, the cool thing about our product is, versus some venues, we have historical averages on where we've been in each show, and I can kind of say what I should expect and be able to forecast a lot of different markets. But we also got to take in cultural and economic drivers that are going to impact that. For example, when we're going to book a show in West Texas, I am looking at the oil prices, because if the refineries aren't moving in that part of the country, I'm not going to make any money. And we have to understand that. When we're doing a show in Middle California, I got to look at agriculture futures. And because, once again, if it's going to be soft, you have to know these. But these are the things that factor into it. And I'm pretty sure Kevin can talk about it in his economy, just being locally there. Those little minute things can have a big dividend on either one of those tickets. So, so as a promoter, one of the things that I've gotten better with in working with WWE is looking at economic drivers like I'm literally a stockbroker, because I need to understand that in order to price effectively for that show or that market.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times what I hear people doing is they will price it based on what it did in another state or another city, and
Dumbest thing ever.
They don't know why it didn't work, So, Kevin, what price levels are you have a similar experience to Kosha?
We're a little different. Obviously, we're 1,900 seats. So our bread and butter is that P1, and that P1 is what drives us getting to break even. It not only that, it allows us to have a P3 price that is more affordable for people. What we struggle with the most, if we struggle, we're struggling with that P2 level.
Okay.
You're going to have the people who will pay anything to see Peter Frampton. You have to figure out how many of those people are there in your market, and then there are people who will pay the lower price. It's finding those people in the middle, which, like you said, Kosha, make up the bulk of the scaling. But so you kind of use the P1s to offset the P2s and really focus on the middle. We don't look at, we don't have the agriculture or the oil, but for us, because we're not selling the same product in different markets, we're selling different products in the same market. We're looking at what's going on around us, globally, the election, or locally, yeah, right? I said the E word and I apologize. Or locally, is WWE at the arena, or Zach Brown Band, or Alan Jackson, or whoever it may be. While it may not be the WWE may not conflict with Neil deGrasse Tyson, who we had here last night, it's still pulling entertainment dollars out of the market.
That's
so
true.
It doesn't matter. So a lot of times you think about, it has to be like X, but it's really not, because there's only so many people in the market. There's only so many expendable dollars in the market. So if 10,000 people are already going to WWE and taking their kids, that's 10,000 people that are not
Right.
going to be able to come here. So you try your best to work around that, but as we call it, the avail gods don't always allow for that, and we end up with certain acts that are competing against like acts in bigger buildings.
Yeah.
I would totally agree with that. And once again, entertainment is entertainment, and I think that a lot of people are slowly getting away from or accepting that entertainment is just a global phenomenon. People just want to be entertained. It doesn't matter if they go to the local roller derby, to go play ping pong, to go to Dave and Buster's. It's entertainment. You know, and we talk about it all the time. You know, people always think that we're, you know, we only can compete with ourselves because there's not a lot of wrestling promotions out there. But you'll be amazed. Comic-Con, you know, movie releases. If Marvel or Warner Brothers puts out a national release, we're going to suffer just because it's that same genre. But we also compete with Applebee's and Chili's because, once again, that's a night out of entertainment. And you have to understand that. And so that's where we rely on venues, once again, that can help drive that. You know, we are now being more picky on food choices for a lot of the venues that we go to, because we want to be able to say that, hey, not only can you get this entertainment, but you can get everything else that you normally would get that you got to pick and choose. We want to bundle that. And I think bundling is a key word. They're not bundling in the sense of trying to, you know, bring together disparate packages into one, but once again, just creating that putting all the assets together for that one shared experience.
Okay. And at this point, if you have any questions in the audience in relation, we're going to keep talking about pricing a little bit, but if you've got pricing related questions in particular, go ahead and type them in there in the questions panel, and we'll have Amy keep an eye on that for us. I hear a lot of people that just, what do you guys do when you get it wrong? You know you priced an event wrong. How do you respond to that? You know, when you have time. You're both laughing, so I know it happens.
It happens more than
wrong. Yeah. I'm like the Messiah. I get it right 100% of the time.
So, hey, Kevin, the other
Kevin. If you got it right 100% of the time, everybody would be doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
You know, again, you're playing averages. Again, you can book something, and then you know, for example, we booked Night Ranger, and you know, and then a Styx Foreigner show gets dropped, you know, on you at the competing venue, you know. So sometimes you can't control that thing. What I like is, you know, there are the Groupons and BOGOs that you know, that we do use strategically, as opposed to just a fire sale. You know, Groupon in particular gets your event out to a massive amount of people. We have about 100 and something thousand people on our email list that, you know, of constant concert buyers. You know, they have millions of people on their email list. So, you know, I'll take the lost revenue and call that a marketing expense to get it out to those people, and not only look at it as a discounted ticket.
You tend to do that when you know it's not selling well, though? Is that when you might?
Well, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's when it's not selling well, and sometimes it's you know at the get-go to get the announcement out to the most amount of people. But it's not about getting the pricing wrong, because I truly, like, you know, Kosha was joking, but I truly believe that, you know, 98% of the time we do get the pricing right. It's the factors that are around the event that deter the buyer. Because and we've tried this where you do put something on Groupon, or you do BOGO it or discount it, just to see if it was a price sensitivity issue. And 99% of the time, it's not a price issue. It's there's a lot going on issue.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Now, I would jump in and say that, you know, for me, I think it's like three factors that I will look at. Is it timing? Is it volume? Or is it content? Meaning, with the timing aspect of that, we may have just come to the market flat out at the wrong time. And we have to be honest enough as a promoter with ourselves to accept that. I think the other portion of that is going to be volume, and which kind of goes hand in hand with content. Sometimes the content is just not a fit. And we have to be honest about that in certain markets. You know, in certain markets for us, they're just not on wrestling just yet. And you have to look at that. And so the thing that I look at before I start repricing is, are we getting the volume and we're getting a ton of abandoned carts? If you are getting a ton of abandoned carts, you have a pricing issue. But if you're only getting 8 or 9 hits to the site, and you normally would get 30 or 40 hits to your site, then you may have a content or timing issue, and you may have to just either, you know, suck that up. So I think that that is the biggest thing to try to understand before you start adjusting prices or saying you got it right or wrong is your cart abandonment. And you can focus on that. And if you do have a high cart abandonment rate, then there are tactics that you can use in order to try to retarget those people with a specific promotional offer or whatnot. But if you're not getting the volume, you got a bigger issue, and you need to address that totally different. It doesn't matter if you put the ticket for the millennials out for free. It just the volume may not be there.
They don't want to go.
They just don't want to go. It is what it is.
You know, they don't know about it.
You know what? I've always had a problem with free because you're totally devaluing the product.
Right.
That is a 4-letter word.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
it's we'll give comp tickets out for industry reciprocal stuff and charities and all that kind of stuff. But just doing mass free, I did an event. It was a Verizon thing with Fergie where they just gave out, it was a 2,000 seat theater and they gave out 12,000 free tickets. You had to go to a Verizon store to get it, and the ROI was about 400 people on 12,000 tickets.
Right.
Because there's zero value on free. If that ticket was $5 and they had to go to Verizon, then they had to pay $5 to get a Fergie ticket. 2,000 people at least would have shown up. But free has no value. It's a throwaway, and you have no,
Right.
So that's my opinion.
So don't give it up just because you're thinking, oh, hey, I'm going to get, merchandise or concession revenue or something like that.
And that used to be the old adage. You know what? This popcorn won't sell itself. Parking won't sell itself. I need to get bodies in there to do it, and it's not the case anymore. And once again, people have alternatives.
Well, there is a major promoter. I'm not going to name names. Who
is not this
and
Kevin
it's
Stone,
not
by the way.
WWE.
No, there are major promoters that will book major acts and come out of the gate with 4 packs for $19 or what. And it's what I call it's just beer money. It's beer sales. It's literally just. And I kind of feel like it's making it much harder for the rest of us who are truly trying to book shows and do entertainment for the sake of entertainment. Don't get me wrong, the ancillary stuff help get you to your bottom line, but when it becomes your sole mission to sell beer, you should be working in a bar, not in an entertainment.
You can get beer at Applebee's, bad beer.
Well, you can get that at amphitheaters too, bad beer.
Yeah, that's very true. Oh, let it out of the hat there, didn't you?
Oh, did I say that?
You did. No worries at all.
I thought I was on mute.
Yeah. No, I didn't mute you there. But hey, I don't see any questions popping up. We'll keep an eye on that on pricing. That's what happens when you're thorough and you have good content. You don't end up getting a lot of questions. But as you have those attendees, we welcome those and we'll throw those out to the guys. So talking about kind of going from free to talking about filling up dates, maybe Kevin, you would run into that in your building in one way. And Kosha, you might say, we just got to get the show out there. How do you know, when a show really fits a market? You going with the data? I mean, Kosha's looking at, farming reports and oil reports,
No.
How do you guys know if something's going to fit so you're not just putting a date on the calendar and then trying to make it work later?
Well, we do a lot of that. For us, keep in mind, we're a television company that just puts on live events, but our live events drive our television business. Mm-hmm. And so, we use our live events as a Trojan horse to invade a market and to see if there's going to be any appetite for it. So we're a little backwards in terms of that. But for us, we look at, everything from, the DMA population, how many people are there, past, we look at the venue and look at the past history in the venue, which is critical for us. Can the venue turn events? If the if the venue has no life, meaning you just don't have a lot of events going on, it's not something that's going to work for us because your database is not there. You don't have the local support. People don't know how to come and park at your venue. All those factors start to weigh against us. And so the first thing we look at is history for us, and the second thing we look at is that market, and we have specific questions we ask about that market that we try to fill in our reports to analyze that and forecast that market. And then thirdly, and most importantly, is going to be the capacity, and can we make money on it? Can we break even? Is it union or non-union? Is it are you going to is it going to be a co-pro, or are you going to charge us rent? And we look at those and put those key business indicators in there and try to make a rational decision of whether or not we proceed with that building. It's kind of a cut and dry scenario for us.
Yeah.
I think for us it's a little bit more of a risk and a hope and a prayer at times. We'll look at obviously past history in our market. We will look at past history in other markets with the understanding that we know Jacksonville isn't Miami. Cuban Act doesn't work in Jacksonville where it would work in Miami, and Southern Rock will work in Jacksonville but doesn't work in Miami. So it's knowing your market. We know, unlike Kosha, we live and breathe this market. So once you kind of do the initial research, and after 3 years, I kind of feel like we have a good sampling size of the market. We then go and try to find those acts that fit the bill. For us, a lot of times agents are calling us and pitching acts, or we're going down a roster of acts who are available and who are touring and routing through Florida. More often than not, we have to say pass, because it's not going to work in Jacksonville, as much as an agent will tell you, oh, it works great in Miami. Okay, it's not going to work in Jacksonville. So you start to get great relationships with agents who understand that and don't push when it's just not right.
Mm-hmm.
When Kosha mentioned, a busy building, kind of gets first straw, kind of, and that's what we did when I came here 3 years ago. The biggest comments were, downtown, we don't know where to park, it's dangerous, all those things, and that's because it wasn't ingrained in their mind that the Florida Theater is a safe place. It's an easy. There's 3 parking lots. I can see them out my window. So those were just excuses. But now we're significantly busier. We have the names. We constantly have products. You constantly have ads in paper or radio, or so that you're constantly, everywhere they go, they're hearing Florida Theater, whatever it may be, and they may not be Odd Squad fans, but they're associating with your brand constantly and constantly and constantly. So that's sort of our strategies, to try to fill dates.
Well, Kevin, you just touched on one of the questions that we just got is,
I'm sorry.
No, that's good, because the question was asked, are you doing print ads? And you mentioned newspapers, and what's the percentage of your ad budget that you're spending on print? Is print still alive for you?
It is. It's an unfortunate medium.
Can't track it, man. You can't track it.
One is you can't track it, but there are still people who read the paper, and the people who read the paper typically have more expendable income to blow.
Is he right there?
So, yes.
Yeah. So social is obviously the way things are going, but if you can't track it, but if they open the paper and if they see your ad mixed in with everything, then in my opinion, that's a bigger hit than getting 10 people on social who just scroll by.
Yeah. So do you spend differently based on who the market is then? Like if you knew you had a show that was more affluent, right, you're going to go more print? Wow.
Yeah, it's the same as going more print or going, NPR radio station versus classic rock. You really have to drive your marketing plan to that audience, as opposed to a blanket marketing plan that covers 33% of paper, 33. It doesn't work. It really has to be fluid. And again, if something's not working, you pull back and reallocate. You
got to fish where the fish are. At the end of the day, if you know the content and you know the audience. People always ask, what is marketing? When I go do talks at different schools, and it's the art, not a science, but the art of getting the right message to the right people through the right medium. And though that message, that medium is always going to change, but you have to try to, you're not going to send a text message to a retirement home, and you're not going to send a postcard to a teenager.
Maybe in 40 years, but not now.
Maybe in 40 years, but you're exactly right. But I'm pretty sure by that time we're going to have chips in our brains where you just shoot.
We're just going to think about it, and then they're going to buy a ticket, right?
But you can't. You can't. I think print. For us, we as a company, we hate print, but we need print. And it is. And I will also piggyback this. Any venue managers out there on the call, it is critical, at least for a promoter, when we're looking at trying to bring a show to your market, or we're trying to pitch you on whatever we're going to do to get a deal done. It is critical that that building has life. It shows like, even if you're only booking 8 shows a year, you make that building appear as if there's traffic there. Make sure that the website is dynamic. Just keep the website updated with new stuff. Change it out. Those are the things that we try to do little shady ways to see if a building is legitimately has life in it. I go to your website, and if your website is on the back end of another website to try to, or it's the same image that we've seen there's no dynamic appeal to it. It shapes my opinion of your venue. So as you're talking about trying to book acts to get artists to either come in, or for us, sometimes we'll do a co-pro, sometimes we just do a flat out rental. It's critical that your branding reflects the fact that you can host things. You have people there. The building has life, and it is not just we're going to show up and there's, we got to dust off the doorknob to find the key, and some guy's going to pull out the big key ring and open it up and let it in. So that's critical. If you aren't doing that, if your social feeds aren't up and running, if the last post you had was 11 months ago, you're going to have issues. And so just even if you got to make up stuff, just put it out there. It is critical that you do that.
Yep, that's good. What are some of the creative things? You guys talked a little bit about bundling, Kosha. What are you doing to get more creative than just booking the shows, buying the ads, and showing up? What are you seeing by the way of creative tools that you can have to basically get more butts in seats and keep your bottom line up as high as you can?
For us, one of the things that has worked well lately, it's actually 2 things that have worked well lately. We've sold, we sell T-shirts, we sell all of this and that, but 2 things that have worked for us is the first one being all-in pricing. One price, no facility fee, tax, credit card fee, blah blah blah. You get your hotel folio, your rental car bill, you got 37 different taxes, right? So for us, when we started saying the tickets to be $27, it took, if people register that, they can do the math on that really quick, and that includes all fees and everything. So we've seen that model work a little bit better in terms of selling just flat out tickets. The other thing that has worked for us is obviously going to be the VIP appeals, and VIP appeal is or the affinity things that you add onto it that's different from show to show, market to market. Sometimes that's going to be we'll load food credits onto your ticket. Sometimes we'll load merch credits onto your tickets. Sometimes your ticket will get you an automatic upgrade to the next section. Those type of things work. I will say the thing that has not been working for us as of late, and it's been a pet peeve of mine because I've hated it from the beginning, is the 4-pack.
I hate the 4-pack.
I hate the 4-pack because typically, who the flip ever just goes for exactly with 4 people?
4 people,
What if I have a 5th friend that wants to go? What do I do? How do I work that? So what we've done is we've eliminated. We still use a 4-pack to some degree. But what we've done now is we'll take that 4-pack pricing and just make it a pair, and then we'll let them go an increment up to 8 on that. We just as long as you buy 2 tickets, we're fine with it. And just once again, because it's just hard to say you got to buy increments of 4. What if I have 7 people? Now I'm paying extra. So we've gotten rid of that model and kind of adopted, hey, you got to buy this, but bring out your friends, special rates. You can get the 8 tickets, and that's worked well for us. It kind of broke down that barrier. Now, The other thing that we've done with the 4-pack, if you do have to generate that revenue based off that 4-pack, is we took away the multiple of 4. So once you buy a minimum of 4, you can buy 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, but you just have to buy a 4.
Yeah.
And so that eliminated, just don't. The days of selling in multiples I think are long gone. Get a minimum and then go incrementally after that, but don't force somebody to buy 8 tickets when they only need 7.
What is this thing that Ticketmaster just released something called Me Plus 3, and it's like, come on,
Yes, and I'm guilty of using it, and I hate it, but I'm guilty of using it, and I hate it. I hate it.
That is not invited, friend. That is weird stuff, man.
Yeah.
We've tried Me Plus 3 a few times, and I haven't witnessed it to work very well.
Yeah.
For us, we're again, we don't have the control over the product that Kosha has. So it's very, unless you're doing sort of a Broadway series, it's very difficult to package things or bundle things or all that kind of stuff. So the only thing that I can really do is change the product on stage. And the way in which we're doing this right now is by taking the nostalgic classic rock bands and adding a rock symphony behind it. And it's a group of local players. We branded them as the Jacksonville Rock Symphony. Nobody knows who they are. You can only see them at the Florida Theater. But we've done probably 6 or 8.
Are they hidden or something? Like you can't see them?
You can see them, but they don't realize that they're just a bunch of local players that we brought together.
Gotcha.
But it's taken certain acts that are at like a B level or a C level and moved them to a B or maybe a low A, which for our bottom line is huge at a 1900. It takes you from a mediocre event to a really amazing event, and that's where we've been able to create a series, a rock symphony series. We've been able to get a sponsor.
Cool.
We've been able to So and again, it's just a name I came up with 3 years ago, and I added it to Dennis DeYoung and Alan Parsons and the orchestra.
Are you part of this symphony, Kevin?
I do not play in it. Okay. I'm the mastermind behind it.
The mastermind
awesome.
behind it. That is great.
We have a local music contractor that he handles getting all the players, and we just brand it and put a name behind it, and then we sell it. And it takes, Dennis DeYoung before I got here was at he did 450 paid and did 1,200 the last time. So it just elevates, and like I said before, the difference between that 400 and the 1,200, that's our sweet point right there.
200%.
You love your percentage.
I will say too, to Kevin's point, as a promoter, we're always looking for that ancillary inventory that's just native to the building. Because those are the things that we don't know about, and that is a great deal. We bring a show there. I would love to be able to say, okay, great. Can we have an opening act before we do anything? Can I put this band in the concourse? Can we put them in? So if you guys have those type of deals that you can add on, that's cheap. Bad choice of words, but a cheap entertainment option for us that we can put onto our show, and you can include that in a building deal. It sweetens the pot, and it gives us something else to talk about, versus just saying, all right, come watch wrestling. You can say, hey, pre-show, like we have a venue here, the Forum. The Forum does a phenomenal job with their pre-show entertainment, and it's something so simple. Typically, shows start around 5 o'clock. I'm sorry, shows start around 7:30. But traffic in LA sucks. So what they do, and what they've done for a few shows for us, is they'll basically have a food truck bonanza outside in their parking lot. If you get there before, I think 6, you can get into this food truck park for free. You can avoid the traffic. But what it does is it just creates something that costs absolutely nothing, but creates ancillary entertainment. So those little nuggets of taking advantage of some of the barriers to entry and turn it into a positive, meaning you can come, you can park early. We won't open the doors until 6, but we got food trucks out there where you can eat for an hour early. You can try these different deals, Taste of the World, Taste of LA, but it's something that they've turned into a unique thing that shows love it. I love doing a show there for that reason, because it just creates a different element. It's something else that we can talk about on our social feeds, as opposed to hey, come to the exclusive club, or buy your ticket and get a T-shirt. It just gives you a different method of marketing.
Yeah, and you know, sports, I've always said, oddly somehow, are ahead of the arts in the way they do a lot of things, and they really created. If you look at like when the NFL Super Bowl game, you know, when that and that's a massive world event, obviously, but there's so many events around that. And sports have kind of done that for years. And even when my kids were little, we'd go to Diamondbacks games. There were loyalty programs in place, you know, where you'd swipe your card and you'd get $2 off a Coke or something, and that was cool. And so finding ways to really increase that engagement and add to that event, even if it's in a concert realm, or you know, which obviously we don't have time to talk about festivals because we're going to bring that up a little bit, but that's kind of I think the festival shtick, right, is that there's all this stuff going on, and so you're not just going in there for that 2 hours of the event, and that's kind of what I see you guys saying, Kevin. You're looking for ways that you could pump up your event and add more to it so that it becomes really more of an experience.
The unfortunate part for us is sheer space. We're a downtown venue with very small lobbies, so you have to kind of go with what
works for
what
you,
you have, and that's why we're using the city park across the street from us. But unfortunately, it doesn't tie into the patrons kind of grabbing a drink and going to sit down because there's a street in the middle of it. But it creates a vibe as they come up and approach the theater.
Maybe you'll shut the street down at some point.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah. So that's the only question I see. We're nearly out of time. What would you say is a final thought on what do you see for 17? Continued good trends and ahead. What do you guys see?
I know as a promoter standpoint and a venue standpoint, I think the partnership and the integration is going to be more. I see, this Bluetooth technology and RFIDs, or radio frequency identification, is going to be huge down the line, and is going to create more crowd participation and things of that nature. So I would definitely try to get on top of that technology. We are. I mean, that's one of the things that we're trying to double down on. Also, for us, the interactive seat models. I think the idea around that is going to change a little bit. I am now exploring ways to make the ISM model a perk for buying early, and then I put you where we need to put you if you don't buy during this said time. So, for example, during the pre-sale, if you have a hot show, you want to create a perk for your fans during that, during the pre-sale. Turn the ISM on, let them choose exactly where they want to sit, and they do it, and then afterwards turn it off. And if you didn't buy during that time, you kind of just get the run-of-the-mill seats. And I know that that's kind of a blasphemy for a couple of people, but it's what we're trying to buck is that trend of the late buying fan. We're trying to get our money up front. We want to know exactly where we are, and then and I don't want to penalize somebody for buying a ticket, but we living in this living social Groupon society, and people are waiting for that free offer or that Me+3 or that discounted deal, and they're waiting until the last minute to see, and it's a game of chicken, is how can we recalibrate the sales cycle to work in a promoter's or venue's favor just to get the money in advance up front. So I think that's going to be something that we're going to look at. And thirdly, or lastly for me, I think one of the things that I'm starting to look at a lot more of is the average tickets per account, because that number is starting to grow, but the converse of that is the dollar value of that ticket is starting to go down, meaning people are buying, our average ticket I think was like 3.6 for a while, but now we kind of increased to like 3.8. So that number is increasing, but they're buying at a cheaper level. So I want to understand that, and I think everybody needs to try to understand why is that, and dive into that, because the analytics are going to be what drives your pricing, your modeling, your scheduling, whatever you do to forecast your revenue. So I will go off of that, and then and lastly, I think that going into 2017, it's really going to come down to how are we bridging that gap now? Because the gap between the Gen X and baby boomers, or millennials and baby boomers, is widening, but they're all coming together and converging on live events. And so how are we pleasing both masters? How are we going to offer free and upscale? How are we going to offer inexpensive and expensive? How are we going to offer, you know, a slow, relaxing, romantic evening with some version of an EDM rock fest?
At the WWE.
Which is our product when you think about it. But I think that I think we're going to have to evolve beyond just that single focal product, and we're going to have to do a lot more quote-unquote event stacking. And that just goes to Lynne's point of what else can I do to try to create more ancillary events around my center event in order to attract a larger body, because once again, we're going to have to go outside of our niche now because people are just choosing other things.
Kevin, what do you see coming up?
So well, again, we're in two totally different worlds, but for me, I honestly don't know what's coming around the horizon. Now that the election's over, we can take a breath. We're starting to see ticket sales start to pick up. People aren't sitting on their wallets as much as they were before. You know, we're obviously gonna you know, focus on every generation from kids to grandparents, because for us, you know, you mentioned the festivals. The festivals are where the millennial crowd is getting the majority of their music, because for one ticket price they get to see all these bands.
Yeah.
It's very hard to compete with that. So we're going to focus on those people who don't really want to, you know, sweat it out in a field for 10 hours, and there are a lot of those people.
You have air conditioning. You can remind everyone of that.
Yeah, we are, you know, usually it works. We're a 1927 building, but we do offer air conditioning. But what I have noticed lately is those last-minute buyers aren't necessarily last-minute because they're looking for a deal. The social media has trained us to, you know, say, oh, you know, Gabriel Iglesias is coming. I'm interested in that event, and then I put it out of my mind until a digital device tells me again that this event's coming, you know, and then usually, you know, 90% of the time it's fine. You come and you get a ticket. Last night for us, it was really apparent that people during the day got an event notice that Neil deGrasse Tyson was coming, and then they started calling and working their every angle to try to get a ticket to a sold-out show. So it's really trying to utilize those social elements not only for advertising, but constantly reminding people that the event is coming to maybe get them to trigger a purchase. From a venue perspective, when I'm working with either an act or an agent or a promoter, is whatever you got to do, you know, say yes more than you say no. The more you
love that.
Kosha loves that.
Now I'm not saying give away the farm. I'm just saying.
I heard give away the farm.
Yeah, and most agents do here give away the farm. But what I mean by that is, don't always be the no at the end of a phone call. Do whatever you got to do to try to figure a way to find a home. And maybe it won't work on the WWE because you're pretty much an arena space, but you know, we run the spectrum of artists here, and we're trying to find, you know, we're 1,900 seats. I'm doing things at a 400-seater because it won't work here, but I'm going to help that agent out and that artist out, and I'm going to make sure that they come to this market. I'm going to try to find the right venue for them to play. So I'm also being the venue and trying to negotiate with venues to get a promoter deal. So the more you say yes, it goes back to the same as the more activity you have in your building. The more you say yes or put that extra effort in to try to say yes, the more you'll continue to get that calls when the sure thing comes your way. And that's my goal for 2017.
Say yes, the year of yes. Whoa!
We need something.
We're going to close it out. Guys, this has been so informative. Excellent panel. It has been recorded. We'll make sure you get the links so you can share it and use it as you like. And also with all the attendees, you'll get a link as well so that you can share it with people in your organization that couldn't log on today. If you have a question, go ahead and type that in. And just, quick reminder, one thing that we're seeing, we get a cutting edge with, we're talking about the new enterprise product that we have, and there's an app that we're going to be releasing next year with that, and it does exactly what you were talking about on reminders. So what we're seeing from the partner in Australia is a lot of waitlisting, and so and then the app can really be a tool for doing push notifications. So you can have a venue app as well, and you get the people engaged to that level with your venue or your organization app, and that way you could do push notifications because they need that digital reminder. You're exactly right on those last minute buys. And another thing that we're seeing in some markets is hitting them with messaging when they hit the venue. One thing that is coming down the road is you've already got a ticket, you get to the venue, and with geofencing, you get a notification that prompts you maybe to upgrade your seats. So if you've got some VIP higher level seats, they're already now energized about the event, right? They put the money out 6-8 weeks ago. They're not thinking about how much they're spending. And oftentimes, if we make that transaction really painless, we can get them to upgrade because they're already there. They're in that moment, and the reasoning has gone out the door, and now we're caught up in the fun of the event. And when you get an offer to say, hey, for $10, do you want to raise your seat, or for $25 or whatever, we got some VIP seats available, we're seeing a lot of effectiveness with that. So I think those types of interactions are going to continue to be really key, so that you've got the buyer and you got them here in their hand, and you can interact with them that way and get them to move up what they're doing and get them to get more engaged once they hit the property the day of the show as well. So keep an eye on for that. It's coming. So it's going to be a good year in 2017. I hope and pray. We've actually, as I said yesterday, had an oddly good year this year. The first quarter was, most of the clients were really down. We had lowest ticket sales, I think, almost ever in February. And then come September, we had highest ever. And so this is a head-scratching business sometimes. Sometimes you just can't figure it out, but that's why we keep having these panels. And
that's an interesting point in an election year that you were able to catch up into September.
Yeah.
One more point.
Yeah.
We switched over to TicketForce in May or August or something.
Yes, somewhere in there.
Yeah, we did. As a comparison, and I'm giving you guys a plug here.
Thank you.
We do a yearly Rocky Horror Picture Show. We show the movie. It's a big event. We do anywhere from 12 to 1,500 people. Last year on Ticketmaster, we sold 85 tickets on Ticketmaster out of the 1,200. Say
for like the online pre-sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For a service fee of $85. That's just put it right there. This year we sold 965 tickets online.
Holy smokes. Yeah.
I'm not going to say that the service fee, but
right.
And every ticketing seminar meeting we went through was like your online sales are going to increase, and we're like, how is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
But that was the first time that we were able to show.
It's fabulous.
Simply controlling your product allowed us to get to more people and therefore increase revenue.
And you got to remove the barriers to buying, right? I mean, there are so many barriers to buying. So anything you can do to remove that. Thanks for sharing that, Kevin. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
And that is what we aim for. That's what we're here to do, is to see those. That's where we all benefit. If every ticket was sold online, woo, we'd be happy. So we're headed there. We're getting there. But thank you. And thanks, Kosha. Thanks, Kevin. You guys have been great today. Appreciate it very much. I'm getting just some set of questions. I'm getting great session. Thank you. Things like that. So I want to thank you for all the clients, and keep the faith. And thanks again for your knowledge today. Appreciate it so much. Everybody have a great rest of the day. We're out.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.